What does digital prosperity mean for Canada? How can we take the right steps to help individuals, businesses, and communities thrive in a digital everything future? Welcome to Faster Forward, powered by Interac. Here we'll explore the possibilities of the digital future and the ways we can build that future together. I'm Richard Mills, Head of Client Relationships and Solution Engineering at Interac, and your host for this first episode of our Faster Forward series. At Faster Forward, our goal is to look at the operators, protectors, and enablers supporting Canada's digital economy. In my role, I work closely with businesses to understand how payment infrastructure impacts their day-to-day operations, and it's no surprise that smooth money movement is becoming one of the biggest drivers in digital prosperity. For this episode, I wanted to look into the operators behind that shift, the builders creating real-time, embedded, and low-friction payment experiences. So I sat down with someone who's been at the center of this work for years, Brent Ho-Young, CEO and co-founder of Dream Payments. Brent has helped financial institutions, insurers, and platforms modernize the way they move money. Together, we dig into the velocity of money, digital sovereignty, and real-time payments, and the changes that could unlock growth for businesses of all sizes.
Hi, I'm Brent Ho-Young. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Dream Payments. And Dream, we are an embedded payments and money movement platform. We're helping financial institutions, insurance carriers, and SaaS platforms embed payments, whether that be payment acceptance or digital disbursements, into their workflows. So ultimately, one central payment hub that's helping our clients and partners digitize, automate.
Fantastic. Brent, thanks for being here. At Interac, our North Star is to lead Canadians towards digital prosperity. If you had to define your vision for digital prosperity in Canada, what would it look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rich. I think to me, digital prosperity in Canada means an economy where money moves as fast as ideas and innovation. It's really where individuals and businesses, from the smallest entrepreneurs to the largest enterprise, they have real-time access to funds, transparent view of the data and workflows, and tools that let them operate and transact with confidence. And I think it also means a Canada where homegrown technology isn't just about participating, it's leading. And I think if we get this right, Canadians can feel it in fewer delays, fewer frictions, faster payments, and business feel it in ultimately faster growth.
I think that's a great answer. I love how it ties back to the Canadian economy in general. Less friction is certainly a good thing for Canadians and how we interact.
Absolutely.
Today, we're focusing on the operators of our economy and the role that digital sovereignty and homegrown technology play in shaping our future. Dream Payments has been at the heart of enabling real-time embedded payment solutions. What are the biggest shifts in how Canadian financial institutions are thinking about their role in the digital economy? What are you seeing that excites you, and what are you seeing that concerns you?
Overall, we're seeing a real shift from financial institutions in Canada acting purely as service providers to becoming, say, full-scale digital operators across the ecosystem. So that happens, I think, in a few different dimensions. So one is moving from batch processes to real-time payments and money movement. It's opening up their systems to APIs that allow companies like Dream Payments to partner and leverage their core infrastructure, the security, the robustness of their solutions, but allow partners and companies like Dream, again, to be able to offer very tailored and verticalized solutions to businesses as well as consumers. And so it's really, I think, with financial institutions, we've seen they've got the opportunity to really be kind of that almost operating system that others are plugging in and innovating on and developing solutions that are very tailored to customers and use cases that we probably hadn't imagined in the last 10 years ago.
For the benefit of the listener here, you mentioned both APIs and batch processes for payments. Can you define what API and batch processes are?
That's a good point. Batch processes, I think, are the bane of our existence. But essentially, if we think of a batch process, that's basically essentially a scheduled batch or at the end of day payments that might have been set up by a given company that have to be delivered. Say it is an insurance carrier that they've got claims to make, rather than those payments being made in real time as soon as the claims adjuster approves that claim, and funds would be delivered effectively immediately to the claimant who's waiting for those funds. The batch process is basically end of the day, they're collecting all the activity and transactions that had happened. And then the bank is processing those maybe the next business day and delivering the next business day or maybe a couple business days later and delivering those to the appropriate claimant. versus APIs, which they're almost like bridges or connectivity between a company or financial institution's services and the enterprise or the platform that needs to invoke them, right? And so you use an API to build the bridge such that my system and my process can talk immediately with, say, the bank's processes and systems. So we get to a point of real time. So as soon as a transaction or as soon as, say, a claim is made, that information or those funds can actually be engaged and transact immediately.
Dream Payments is a proudly Canadian company. In a space often dominated by global tech, what role do you play? And more broadly, what role do Made in Canada fintech solutions play in our economic future?
Yeah, I think Canadian fintech does play a critical role in digital sovereignty, right? So to me, payments are national infrastructure, just like telecom, just like energy. And having Canadian companies build and operate these systems absolutely matters. In the Dream, we're proving that a Canadian platform can power payouts for global insurers, major banks, SaaS platforms in Canada. And it's interesting, right? Because if you think of our market, Canada, very concentrated with financial institutions. And to be able to integrate and power services in Canada for what can many times be a conservative economy or conservative ecosystem, if you can prove yourself in Canada, then your payment solutions can definitely scale to other markets. And our company Dream has proven that, right? So we've built solutions that were built for Canadians, understand the strength of Canada, including Interac, where we've launched Interac e-transfers for businesses. But we were able to take our technology and solutions and deploy them in the US. And I think because we've been able to build and operate in such a market with tons of scrutiny, tons of security, but then we've been able to unleash that within the US. And so Canada served as a phenomenal launch pad for us to prove our technology, to prove the payment flows, and then be able to scale across an even bigger market, if you will.
That's amazing. I never really thought of Canada as New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then for better or worse, to partner with financial institutions and enterprises in Canada, it's just hard, right? To partner, to sell in as well. And so if you can pass the test, if you will, in Canada, the opportunities are phenomenal within the US or other markets globally, because those markets do move historically faster, right? And so to have the proof current points, and I think the world looks to Canada as venerable institutions. Look at when the financial crisis happened, how resilient Canada was. You do have the credibility if you can prove that you've been transacting at scale and with confidence in Canada. So it is to your point, you build it and succeed in New York. If you succeed in Canada, you really have a basis for success in other markets.
Yeah, I mean, that actually leads really well into my next question. So you mentioned that some of our peers are ahead of us. Canada's been slower than many of its global peers in adopting real-time payments. So from your view, who's done it well and what can we learn from those other markets?
Many markets, I think the US actually, with the real-time payment networks that they have, including with the TCH, I think that's a great example, right? Because in the US, for probably about, I think maybe 70%, give or take, of bank customers, you are enabled to receive or execute real-time payments that can deliver funds within 15 seconds across the country. And what we can learn there is that with real-time payments, you can support and activate all types of use cases, right? Whether it be a real-time payment of a claim, right? So somebody gets into an accident, they're hurt. Maybe they're at the roadside and they've got to pay the tow truck driver or whatnot. Like literally the insurer could adjudicate that claim. If you look in the world of AI, if that claim is adjudicated in an automated fashion, right? You could have the claim made within seconds approved, and with the real-time payments, now you're able to deliver those funds in seconds, right? Because ultimately, without real time, what's the sense of all the work we're doing in AI to make faster approvals and workflows and things like that if the last mile for payment delivery takes hours or days or even has to go by check, right? We've launched real-time payments in the US, and that's been a fantastic benefit for and consumers to be able to receive their funds quickly. This could also be, think of whether it be gig platforms or tip payouts at the end of a shift, right? To be able to receive your funds, confirm those funds that money matters and that money's happening as soon as that shift is complete. And I think the benefit there extends to even potentially protecting against, say, short-term lenders and things like that, because people have worked and they're waiting for days or weeks for their actual payroll, right? Allowing a server, allowing a gig worker to access their funds in effectively real time without prohibitive pricing or cost. I think that's what we've seen within the US and some other markets as well. So what's Interac seeing in terms of institutional readiness for faster payments, be it culturally or operationally?
From the bank side, there's tons of stuff going on. There's more to come, but there's actually a lot of things that are here already. Obviously, we have a near real-time payment system already in terms of Interac e-transfer. So you'll find most of the time you're sending a payment, it's going to be in that less than 5-second timeline that we would define as real time, but it won't always be. And so we both know that the payment's happening in real time, the settlement is not. So the biggest thing that's coming on the horizon would be the advent of the real-time rail, of which we will be seeing FIs move over towards that. And in that case, we're going to have both payments going in real time and we're going to have settlement going in real time as well. So in terms of institutional readiness, actually, I guess something that most Canadians would know is that institutions are already able to receive real time today. And the migration that's going to occur coming into the next year will be having them deliver over this real time rail, which will allow everyone to reach that 5-second SLA, which we define as real time. That's going to be a massive change for all of Canadians. So we will then have the full infrastructure set up and ready to go. Then the question is going to be, are consumers ready to use it? Is there going to be demand? And that's something we can dig into more as we keep chatting.
That's a good point.
Real-time infrastructure changes the velocity of money, oftentimes democratizing access to payment services. What does that mean for the broader Canadian economy, business growth, and job creation?
You hit it well, democratizing access, right? So I think it does change everything, whether it be gig workers or small businesses. They ultimately live and die by cash flow. So providing them faster access to money means their bills are getting paid, inventory gets bought, ultimately the stress comes down. It's funny, Dream itself, right? I say we're a small, mid-sized business, and when our clients are paying us late, right, that does have a trickle-down effect to our service providers, right, our suppliers. The worst thing is that if you've got a ton of receivables, but you have a bunch of payables and you're having to have awkward conversations because your vendors, who are your partners really in your business, are waiting. So having the ability to receive funds quickly, and then also the visibility, right, and having information about the payment and potentially understanding where in the life cycle the payment is, that's everything, right? Because lots of people want to be entrepreneurs, but the worst feeling on the entrepreneur is not having line of sight. Can you pay your bills, or can you make payroll? So I think ultimately factor access to funds and cash flow. It's so transformative for everyone in the economy.
Yeah, amazing. Dream Payments has recently launched Interac e-transfer for business within its DreamPay platform, enabling real-time payments for banks, insurers, enterprises, and SaaS platforms. Can you walk us through how that works and what kind of businesses are impacted by what you're seeing so far?
Yeah, we're so proud of what we've built with DreamPay, Interac, and our clients and partners. But essentially, what we've done, and the first use case that we targeted, was to enable insurance carriers to pay claims quickly using Interac e-transfer for business. So as part of that, Dream already had offered the ability to pay claims digitally using EFTs as well as virtual card, also to default to printed and mailed check in worst case. But with the e-transfer capability, we're able to accelerate the payment, right? So really it feels like a real-time payment if you're the customer waiting for your claim. But operationally, it's even better because it's alias-based, right? With email or the mobile number, we no longer need to interact with the claimant to collect their banking information, right? So we're now using e-transfer, and e-transfer is so familiar to Canadians. And so when we're delivering funds and just being able to use, say, their email address, and the customer has the familiarity with the service and they absolutely know they're going to receive their funds very quickly. That's a game changer from a customer experience standpoint. And then, the alternative, right? If we're having to collect the banking information, there are customers or claimants who feel uncomfortable turning over the banking information. And we do use some third-party account verification and capture services. But if you're from the demographic that hasn't really used digital services that much, handing over, using your bank credentials to log into your bank to hand those over to third party, that can feel discomforting. And so being able to incorporate e-transfer into our business and enabling Canadians to receive payments via probably the most trusted payment service, that's been a phenomenal win for us in our insurance business. And we're extending that to other verticals that we're serving, including accounts payable payments for, say, accounting platforms. And again, to enable a business to, say, pay a small supplier and not have to interrogate them for their banking information, but literally just deliver funds via a trusted, normalized e-transfer. It's great for our clients, great for paying their suppliers, and just great for our business overall.
What use case are you the most excited about when it comes to real-time payments? Where will we see the biggest operational shifts?
The insurance use case is probably my favorite use case. When you have had some sort of calamity, some sort of problem, and you get back on your feet, you've got a critical illness claim, you've been hurt, you need to get medical attention, if you will. And when you've made a claim, the claim process is difficult and can be challenging, frustrating, and getting your claim approved or denied, right? And so the ability to have the claim approved and then to have confirmation that it's coming via that email, that is such a differentiator. Because if you think about it compared to other modalities of payments for a claim to be paid, whether it's an EFT or the proverbial check, right? Like the check in the mail. One of the reasons we got into paying out insurance claims or getting into enabling digital insurance claims is that my family, we had a critical illness claim and our insurance carrier fought us every step of the way. Finally, they approved the claim, but then we were waiting weeks for the funds to arrive. And with that, you're checking your bank account continually. There's no alerting that the funds are coming, right? But with e-transfer and how we've implemented it, right, you're getting that notification that it's been approved and the funds are coming. You know what to expect versus, okay, did the EFT land? Or worse, did the check get lost in the mail? Kind of thing. So that's, I think, a phenomenal use case. And we're happy to see insurance carriers across the country adopting it. Rich, from your vantage point, how do you see faster payments unlocking new business models in Canada?
It's massive. With the enablement of real-time payments, we could actually get into a situation where cash is greatly declined or eliminated, which is something that every corporate would like to see. Based on the experience I have with corporates across Canada, if you ask any major treasurer, what's your least favorite form of payment and what is your most costly form of payment, it's going to be the same answer. It's cash. Dealing with cash, the security around cash, it's a very painful process to use. And really, the corporate treasurers I've talked to would love to fully eliminate it and move to digital payments. It has not always been possible because we haven't had real-time payments. And so when I think of just from the corporate lens, I had a lot of clients in my past role that would be cash on delivery. So these are people who they'd have trucks out in the field, the trucks would drive, and they would not unload the trucks until they had, I'm going to put quotes, cash in hand, which usually meant a check, but they wanted some form of actual thing that they could see. At the time, we didn't have a real-time payment mechanism that was able to take that over. But with real-time payments coming online, it's a situation where that driver could very much get a real-time payment. It could be an email back or a text back or a phone call back saying, has the payment been received? Yes. They open up the truck and all of a sudden they're offloading the truck. It's a game changer, the way that we could start using new use cases that weren't possible before. That being said, every corporate that is in Canada right now has some sort of workaround that is enabling them to continue to use the payment mechanisms that are in place today. So even though they're not very efficient, they've all come up with some sort of a workaround, whether that is an email that comes out after an EFT or it's something else. Getting people to actually adopt the real-time payments, even once they're there, will still be a bit of a lift for the FIs. And I think it's an exciting time, but it'll come with some work as well. Brent, you've built Dream Payments as a kind of infrastructure layer for digital commerce. What lessons have you learned about building trust when your brand is behind the scenes?
Yeah, so I think particularly being an enabler and having that brand. You're building trust quietly. It's every single day, every single transaction. And so when you're in the infrastructure layer, no one sees when things work. They really only see when things don't. And so what we've learned is reliability and consistency is the most important things. That beats flash. Security beats speed. And I think transparency actually is so important. And so, as I mentioned previously, like the ability to, I guess, monitor a payment or getting notified where the payment is, the payment coming, even if there's a delay, right? To be up to speed. I think that transparency can beat perfection many times over. Lots of times people say things aren't life or death, but when it comes to payments, right? Like that could be the life or death of a business or a commercial relationship, or just helping someone in their family as well too. So that trust is something that I think all of us in the payments industry take seriously at heart. Rich, trust has been paramount for you and your team as well. Given where Interac sits in Canada's digital economy, how do you continue to build trust with businesses around the security of real-time payments?
One of the biggest problems with real-time payments is that it in general means real-time fraud. That's the big reason why Interac is building a large real-time fraud solution that will be going in place with the real-time rail. So a lot of people may not know this about Interac e-transfer, but on the Interac e-transfer network right now, there is fraud monitoring that is going on behind the scenes for each one of those transactions. You may see it as a friction sometimes. Most of the times you don't, but it's always there. So it's always there scanning your transactions and trying to reduce fraud as much as possible. As we're moving into enabling the real-time rail and having transactions move over to the real-time rail, we are going to have an Interac fraud solution on that real-time rail as well. So all of the payments that are being cleared on that rail are going to be going through a fraud monitoring system as well. I think we're at the point now in Canada where people have stopped considering checks to be a trustworthy source. Based on the people that I'm having conversations with, at this point, everyone is seeing checks and paper-based payments as a huge liability for Canada. There are workarounds like positive pay, but in general, people know when you're sending a check out the door, it may make it to the recipient intact, or it may get altered, or it may be stolen, or there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So at this point, based on the conversations I'm having, I would say people are ready for the next level of fraud monitoring that's going to come with electronic payments.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Brent, for business leaders listening in, especially small and medium businesses, what do they need to start thinking about when it comes to modernizing and improving the payment journey?
Good question. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because for SMBs, are they thinking about payments specifically, or they're thinking about building their business, growing their franchise, and earning as much revenue as possible? So from that lens, I think the first step is they really have to understand the full payment journey end to end, like how that revenue is coming in, how it goes out, how do they reconcile it? And most business owners don't realize how much friction they've normalized, right? Like just how much foolishness that they're living with. It's funny, like whether it being logging into bank portals, downloading CSV files from accounting tools, manually marking invoices as paid, reconciling transactions line by line. And so I think modernizing starts with eliminating many of those steps. I actually just met with a business owner yesterday in Canada, and he's having a ton of trouble. He uses a modern accounting platform, but he needs to send payments to a vendor in Canada, but the vendor wants it in USD. But his bank won't allow him to do a USD transaction outside of, even though he's got a USD denominated bank account. So he's physically going into the bank to do drafts, right? And that time that he's being spent to physically go into the bank and line up, that's just brutal, right? That's an hour out of his day, or it's an hour not growing his business. So when we think about SMBs like that, we're telling them, okay, hey, think about, okay, that bill that you need to be paid, where does that live in, or where should it live in, right? So probably should live in their accounting platform. And so, hey, can you use tools from the accounting platform such that you can automate that payment and literally hit approve, and that approval should trigger the payment to the service provider. And that's functionality that we're building into accounting platforms, starting with Wave, where an SMB can use Wave as an accounting platform that serves about, I think, 350,000 small businesses across North America. And what's exciting for us is that SMB who uses Wave will be able to initiate a payment, and that payment has the optionality of an e-transfer, and we will automate that e-transfer to their end supplier, right? So that's just one example of trying to remove some of the manual processes such that business owner can really do what they're in business for, right? Rather than having to become a potential part-time accountant, bookkeeper themselves, but really unleashing them to work on their business, automate, remove the manual steps, and just have a better business experience, if you will.
Oh, that's fantastic. In your eyes, how can payments act not just as infrastructure, but as differentiators for businesses looking to grow into that next level? I think your previous answer was just about perfect. I don't know if you want to elaborate on it.
I think just payments become a differentiator when they make your business easier and maybe more trustworthy to work with, right? So in insurance, receiving a claim payment via an e-transfer or digitally during a stressful moment fundamentally changes the experience, right? People remember that at the time that mattered most and, where they had a claim. You're enabling the insurance carrier to prove that they're going to be there when a customer needs them most. They've been paying premium for years and years, and finally they make a claim. You want that experience to feel quick, easy, and for the insurance carrier helping to differentiate by continuing to support the trust and gaining the continual loyalty. Because that's one of the things we realize in insurance is when a customer has a bad experience with the claim, that's the point where they retreat away and really start looking for other options. And so I think payments really touch the core of the customer relationship with businesses. And when they're fast, they're predictable, transparent, the business feels modern, competent, and caring.
So for those wishing to lead the change, what mindset shift is needed to ignite a more agile, operationally sound digital economy?
Yeah, I think the mind shift is just looking at payments not just as a cost center or back office function, but they can be strategic, differentiated infrastructure that determines how quickly businesses can move. And I think this is really how we build agility into the economy. So where we've got an economy where trading partners, businesses, and their suppliers, when there's trust that, hey, payment isn't going to be multiple days, multiple weeks late, and where, say, a supplier doesn't have to chase their client for payment, and they have visibility in terms of when payment is coming, that's just such a huge relief to a supplier. And I think the suppliers helping the businesses get time back and not having their accounts receivable people wasting time trying to figure out where the payment is, where receiving payments on timely and assuredly allows them to free up to do other work.
You began this conversation by painting a vision of digital prosperity. What would you like to add or revise now that we've discussed the building blocks?
Digital prosperity it's not a future state anymore. It's already happening. And I think some of the examples that we've talked about today, they're not pilots or experiments. They're live, they're everyday use cases. They're expanding more and more, right? And I think this is what real digital prosperity feels like. Money moving with people, money moving with businesses, not behind them. And I think with Canada's real-time rail on the horizon, we have the chance not just to catch up to players like the US, what the US has done, but to leapfrog them by building rails that are open, API first, and built for innovation. My vision includes Canada where money movement can be invisible and it's as reliable as electricity. It's always available, always instant, always trusted. When we get there, prosperity becomes something every business and every person can feel, touch, and rely upon to help them in their everyday lives and their everyday businesses.
Oh, that's a really good way to sum it up. Interac is absolutely working to fulfill that dream that you've laid out. And yeah, we're making progress towards it every day. We are both working towards the same future. A huge thank you to Brent for joining me and breaking down the mechanics behind smoother, faster money movement in Canada. What stood out is just how foundational operations are to prosperity. When payments move in real time, businesses can make decisions earlier, access cash sooner, and support customers when it matters the most. It's not just efficiency, it's economic momentum. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, we hope to see you in the next one.